What is the worst thing that you've seen a coworker do and still avoid being fired? A guy at the plant I work at scrapped $360,000 in airplane parts because he didn't even bother to look at the work instructions. He just drives a forklift now. Stole a bunch of Mark tools. They were painted white. Showed everyone in the shop pictures of his deer with said tools in the background. Gets reported. Boss calls him on it. He said, "You got me. I stole a gallon of white paint." Never heard the boss laughing so hard. Year later also he gets promoted, lol. He tried to run over a security officer with his car when the security officer told him he couldn't park where he wanted to park. Almost succeeded. 2. Worked with a guy who punctured the main gas line to our shop 3 separate times. It was a construction company and he somehow was still my superintendent, although he could have blown up the shop. Accidentally send the last 3 years of account details back statements from one company to their direct competitor. Worst coworker ever was the credit mooch. He would constantly horn in on other people's projects, getting his name added to them to make it look like he was doing poop when he actually not. If people tried to assign him any work on said project, he would have a personal emergency or a virus would make him lose all his work, or his schedule is booked with other project, or the worst, he would pull some sucker in to help him with it. And said sucker would end up doing it all in utter frustration. Because he was so good at stealing credit, he managed to get top marks on his reviews despite doing absolutely zero actual work for the company. I know at least 4 people quit due to this guy getting better raises than they did. Far as I know, they never actually got rid of him. Had a coworker as a standard business practice falsely condemn furnaces in winter to pressure homeowners into buying new systems and pad his commission check. I couldn't do anything as I had no direct proof, but he would joke about it all the time. It did finally catch up with him when one customer smelled BS and called other companies with advanced testing machines. Took those results and sued the poop out of him. I ended up working for that second company and haven't looked back. This dude walks a server out of the server room every 6 months or so to sell on eBay. We have literally no security except the front door. But the owner is so ancient and out of touch I doubt she even remembers things are being stolen. Got caught with CP on his work computer. Had access to the net taken away but wasn't fired, as it's possible he didn't know it was real CP. Edit, just to clarify a few things. 1. This was about 15 years ago at a public institution in Canada. 2. CP is child PRN. 3. Upper management was terrible in so many ways. 4. I talked to a friend who was in the RCMP. She said to me reporting him would lead to the institution lawyering up and an internal investigation would happen. That's all because likely upper management erased the HD and left no paper trail. See number 35. He used Kazaa, an ancient P2P. Oh man. It was winter time and she was helping a customer by carrying something they had purchased out for them. Once outside, but still on the store property, she slipped and sustained an injury. Was threatening to sue the business and was also trying to claim workers' compensation. Came into work every day with a sling on her arm and constantly wincing and being in pain. Anyway, HR and the store manager call her into a meeting. Sit her down and show her the video surveillance from outside, which she obviously didn't know was there, showing her faking her fall. I don't know everything, but she got called out hard and she broke down and admitted everything. For some reason they kept her on. She then tried it again like 6 months later, this time claiming that a customer had something from their cart hit her or fall on her or something. Again. Tried to claim workers' comp and had this whole show of being injured. They pull up security footage again and disprove her injury claims. She still wasn't fired. Blew my mind, lol. Guy at my wife's old job was brought in because he was really good at selling the services they provided. Proceeded to send PP pics to the women at work and solicit nudes from them. Women said to stop or they'd take it up with management and it subsided some. Solicited nudes from a new chick who asked my wife about it, and my wife went to management with everything and said this guy's out or I'm quitting. Well, she quit. Guy's still there, but most the original female staff has quit. As an assistant manager at a Valvoline instant oil change, I was dealing with an unreasonable customer that had just spit at a female employee that he didn't want working on his car. He didn't know that the guy under his car was her boyfriend. The guy comes up the steps, grabs an oil gun, and starts pumping 10W30 all climate into the guy's window as he's frantically trying to start the car and roll up the window. The employee was reprimanded pretty hard, but it was understood why he did it. No charges were filed. The franchise owner paid a lot of money to have the guy's car cleaned. Obviously, I never saw him again. Edit, I never saw the customer again. If I remember correctly, the employee was suspended for a week. Edit number 2, I'm very sorry that I misspoke. I was an assistant to the manager. I know someone who managed to close an entire supermarket early for the first time in its history, costing the company several thousands of pounds, because they tried to set a clock on a computer back an hour to avoid missing some deadline for a daily routine. He said it seemed such a good idea at the time. Nothing. Documenting work as completed when no actual work had been done. Management knew or was suspicious of it, but not so much as a write-up or reprimand. Eventually, management changed, figured out no work was being done, called it fraud, and canned them. The job was easy too, and good money. I don't get why they didn't just do the work. Full-on sexual harassment. Little backstory, I work in a private country club style dining banquet event space. A drunk on the job manager pinned an hourly server against the wall during a nighttime wedding reception. She punched him in the ribs and tried pushing him off of her. We all saw it. We all reported to HR. Another manager physically removed him off of her. This was about 4 months ago and he's still in his position. She quit due to him telling everyone she'd lied about the entire situation. HR rep found out about a person's elective surgery and made fun of her with a former employee. Let me recap. This person knew about an employee's private medical information because she worked with our healthcare plan in her role as HR, and shared that private information with another person for the sole purpose of mocking the employee. She was not fired. One of my former co-workers, she's since been fired for stealing customers' lottery winnings, told an elderly woman that she was stupid for not knowing how to pump gas. This woman's husband had recently passed and he had always pumped the gas for her, so she never learned. I had horrible second-hand embarrassment when the woman came in and told us. We relayed it to the manager. Drill a hole clean through a condensate line and have the ceiling of a 3-car garage collapse when the drywall gave. Me, I am that guy. AMA. He was caught selling cocaine on work premises. Everyone was talking about how he's going to get fired. For a week. Then everybody seemed to have forgotten. Helps if the owner is your kid's godmother. Eat weed. Urinate outdoors on garbage cans in public. Masturbate and drink on the job. Not giving patients their medication at the right time and generally not giving a frick about them. I work in a medical marijuana state. One guy neglected to check a dry room for a few days assuming all was well. All was not well. At all. The dehumidifier crapped out while the plants were being hung to dry and sat in a warm, dark room for 3 days before it was someone else's responsibility to check it. By that point every single plant was coated in mold and we had to throw out a little over $1 million worth of product. Side note, I had never done the math to see what he cost us until now and am mad all over again. His only punishment was to be denied moving to day shift, but other than that it was forgotten about. I work in a garden center. This just happened today. Buddy has worked today of his scheduled shifts in the past 2 weeks. He calls in all the time. Leaves a message with the cashiers. and hangs up before a manager can talk to him. On the off chance he does show up, he doesn't do anything besides move some plants around. Hell. My mom was walking through the garden center today and saw him squatted behind a stack of plants playing on his phone. Further, the guy takes multiple unauthorized breaks a day and sits in his car for at least an hour because his back hurts. He has had to write ups for missing work and somehow this lazy poop is still on payroll. He's an ass towards both co-workers and customers alike. Nothing he's done is as preposterous as some of the stories I'm sure are on this thread. But the sheer consistency of his laziness is baffling to me. Obligatory, not me but my wife. She had a co-worker that literally punched a customer. Wasn't fired. He later got into a physical altercation with another co-worker. Wasn't fired. Then he wrapped my wife's hair around her throat and play choked her. Still was not fired. Finally, he got into yet another altercation with a co-worker and pulled a gun on him. All while on the clock. Then he was fired. I worked at a convenience store in a mall. We had lotto. And I had this worker who people called Crazy Joe. Sometimes, when people are doing lotto, they take a long time picking out tickets. So Joe was waiting on a guy. And he was taking a while. And a line was forming. Pretty long. Joe looked at the line and yelled out, "Does anyone have a gun so I can kill myself?" He then stormed off. Same place, Gene. A guy in his 50s. Touched two of my co-workers' asses. One was 17 at the time. The other 19. Both girls. Neither one was fired. I have a co-worker that has terrible work ethic. He doesn't know how to separate his personal life from his work life, so if he's in a bad mood, which happens often, everyone will know including customers. He's had at least 3 disciplinary meetings. Once he was caught just fricking around for an hour, not exactly sure what happened but our boss wasn't happy. Another time he just didn't show up to work without calling in. And it was a day that everyone knew would be busy. I don't know why he hasn't been fired yet. Everywhere else I've worked he would have been gone by now. Drive around the yard on a forklift. No hands on the steering wheel. Firing an nail gun at people and objects around the yard. I work in an agency that coordinates services for individuals with disabilities. We have one worker has about 12 people on her case that gets all of her attention and about 20 who are basically ignored. It's clear she isn't trying. One of the people on her caseload was my former client. I told her the correct contact info. The stuff in the online system was wrong. If she checked the yearly plan or looked in the physical file she could get it. The next evaluation 3 months later she said she had called the number in the online system and nobody answered. I asked about the other ways of contact and she said she wasn't going to check any of the other places. I sent her the info and she got in contact the next day. She constantly says we shups drop people from services because they can't be contacted, and then when somebody else tries they get somebody the first time. Removing somebody from services and getting them back in can be a multi-month process, and if they were getting services they would lose them and maybe not be able to get them back. During evaluations she screams pretty non-stop when anything bad is pointed out. A co-worker jumped out from behind a door at my husband, who is a disabled combat veteran with PTSD. Dressed as if he was from the Middle East. He was literally trying to trigger a flashback. No repercussions, as he was the boss friend. 2 weeks later, he fell down some icy steps and broke both legs. Karma took care of that one. Former job. He would show up to shifts late like 3 or 4 days a week. He would also call in on a somewhat regular basis. Anyone else would have been fired for this. I have no idea what this manager saw in this guy. He still works there, a fake. Had a co-worker pull a knife and threaten to cut me. He did not get fired. I worked for the FAA. I didn't actually see it, but I have heard so many stories about one of my co-workers. He has left his underwear on the floor in the bathroom. He's eaten cinnamon and hot sauce then threw up. He fell off a ladder. And he dropped a tray full of mugs, about 20 mugs. He quit because he thought he had another job lined up. But he obviously didn't. And then my boss rehired him. There's probably more stories that I can't remember at the moment. Also, when he was still in school, he kissed his crush in front of her boyfriend. When someone says idiot, he's the first person to come to mind.
Hi there. Look, if you enjoyed the video, well, why not go ahead and hit that like and subscribe to Reddit Stories. In fact, if you want to see even more responses to this thread, well then, take a look. There's the link in the description below. And remember, show some love to those authors while you're there. And I look forward to seeing you next time.